Howdy, folks. Hope you're keeping well. Ready to learn more vocabulary? Let's do this. The words will be in the description with plenty of example sentences.
But there is also the influence of Greece, Greek culture, Greek philosophy. Paul writes in Greek and he invokes Greek philosophical concepts. And
the first word of the lesson is invoke. Invoke means to reference. There is an idea, there is a philosophy, and you want to use that, for instance, in your discussion with someone. You may invoke it, you may draw on it, you may bring it up, you may mention it. So this is to invoke. Paul invokes Greek philosophy. He is aware of Greek philosophy and he uses Greek philosophy in his writing. Don't confuse that with the verb evoke, which means to stir up some sort of emotion or to conjure up an image, and this is to evoke. Sometimes when we read novels, we find them evocative. So we have evoke, and this is to stir up, is to conjure up, and this word that Tom uses is invoke. He invokes Greek philosophy.
Indeed, infuses them into his letters. I think that you can discern more distantly because it is an influence on Hebrew scripture rather than directly on the world of the early church. Persian dualism.
Let's talk about Persian dualism. Dualism is about two ideas that are usually opposing. They're not in alignment. The ideas that he is talking about originated from ancient Iran, Persian dualism. And he says that you can discern Persian dualism. You can recognize this dualism. To discern something is to see or recognize something when you pay attention to it, when you study it, when you examine it. It is not obvious. It is discernible. You could perceive it, but when you analyze it, you can perceive, you can discern Persian dualism. Like what? For instance, good and evil. Let's hear more about Persian dualism.
The sense that the world and the cosmos is a moral entity, that there are such concepts as good and evil, which the Persians would define as truth and the lie, as light and darkness.
And these are concepts that I believe exist in Zoroastrianism, an ancient Persian religion, Zoroastrianism.
And then, of course, there is the context that is provided by the Roman Empire, which is very self-consciously universalist. Virgil, Rome's greatest poet, claims that the Romans have been given empire without limit by the gods. And the physical manifestations of that assumption are the great roads that are starting to be cast like the mesh of a net over the various provinces that the Romans have conquered.
Let's talk about the verb cast, which means to throw. Sometimes we throw or we cast a net. And he is using this phrase metaphorically. So all these roads are popping up all over the Roman Empire because these are the areas, the lands that the Romans have conquered. So he uses this metaphor beautifully.
Shipping lanes have been largely cleared from pirates. And so the world has been joined together in a way that it had never previously been. And Christianity emerges as, in a way that is very conscious of that kind of universal dimension. And Paul in this, I think, is the key figure. A Judean, raised with a deep knowledge of the scriptures, but also he has a very, very keen awareness of the vastness of the world. And
a keen awareness is sharp awareness, is an expression that we use to talk about someone who has a very good understanding of something or of these different concepts that he's just talked about. A keen awareness. Sometimes we use the word keen to describe someone who can discern things quite well. For instance, to have a keen eye for something.
In a sense, he gives to the non-Judeans in the Roman Empire a chance to share in what have already been discerned by many Gentiles as
Who is a Gentile? This is a non-Jew, is a person who doesn't practice or doesn't believe in the religion of Jews, the Jewish religion. So we have the word Gentile, Judaism. You may be familiar with that religion. And we have the plural, Gentiles. Gentiles, these are non Jews. It's a bit more of a specialist word, but it's nice to learn it.
the kind of the spiritual and scriptural riches of the Judean inheritance. And I think in that context, you can see why Christianity would be as successful as it is, because it is absorbing all kinds of elements that are culturally present in the world of the Roman Mediterranean and mixing them.
So Christianity, Tom says, is aware of all these different concepts and blending them. They're being mixed, they're being combined and infused in Christianity
in a way that proves very appealing to large numbers of people across the Roman Mediterranean, and indeed beyond the Roman Mediterranean into the lands of the Persians as well.
But isn't the appeal still somewhat paradoxical? I mean, this is something that I think you cover in your book, and it's a point that I think Paul made and Nietzsche also made. I mean, I think those are Paul and Nietzsche could be considered the bookends of Christianity.
These figures, Paul and Nietzsche, Sam says, are the bookends of Christianity. Bookend is our next word of the lesson. So these two figures form the framework. So think of Christianity as a picture, and these two are the beginnings and the end. These figures, these personalities, bookend Christianity. So you can use this word as a verb or as a noun. So Sam just used this one as a noun, a plural noun. Bookends of Christianity. So think of it as a spectrum, and then you have Paul at one end, and you have Nietzsche, a philosopher, at the other end. So he says that this appeal, this attraction that Christianity had is somewhat paradoxical. So let's find out why.
But both acknowledged how astounding it was that a living God was crucified, and that somehow this, abject failure within his lifetime to conquer anything became the symbol that...
Okay, let's talk about the expression abject failure. This was a total failure. The word object also captures the concept of something being very embarrassing, very disappointing, even humiliating. This abject failure that Jesus was not able to conquer, for instance, any land. And that was astounding. That was extremely surprising. Let's go back and hear this term again.
Abject failure within his lifetime to conquer anything became the symbol that so much of the world found spiritually inspiring, right? I mean, there had been this historical precedent of various kings and other figures being acknowledged to be divine, right?
Let's talk about a historical precedent. What does it mean? This is an example. This is a guide that exists in history. So we can study it, we can learn from it. This exists in history. It's a historical precedent. In the past, kings were associated or claimed to have divine powers, to have godly features, for instance. So this is nothing new.
Becoming divine at some point in their lives, or just claiming to be divine, and yet they're not the center of a 2,000-year-old cult or worldwide religion.
Right.
So let's linger for a moment just on the strangeness of the Jesus story.
Yeah, it's incredibly strange. And as you say, the strangeness is not the idea that a man can in some way also be divine, because most people in the Roman world take that for granted. And in fact, the fastest growing cult in the 1st century AD is not Christianity, but the cult of another man who was thought to be the son of a god, who proclaimed good news, who claimed to rule over an age of peace, and who, when he died, was believed to have ascended to heaven to sit at...
was believed to have ascended. Pay attention to that advanced grammatical structure. It is to have plus the past participle. He was believed to have ascended. What does ascend mean? It means to go up, to climb. So they thought that he climbed up the stairs to heaven, to paradise. His claim to have ascended to heaven. And the opposite is descend. So we have ascend, to go up, like for instance, a plane may ascend. And the opposite, its antonym, is descend.
The right hand of his father, and this is Caesar Augustus. The man who rules effectively as the first emperor, the son of Julius Caesar, who brings peace to a world that had been ravaged by civil war. And the achievements of Augustus are what raise him to the heavens. The Romans, and indeed many in the provinces, feel that his achievements are of a divine order. The idea that someone who it's not just that that Jesus was an unimportant provincial from a backwater.
A backwater refers to perhaps a town, a village, an unimportant area that is stagnant. It is not dynamic. It's not vibrant. There is not much vitality and liveliness in that particular area. So that is a backwater. It's just one word, backwater. So it's not that used from a backwater. Let's go back and hear this idea again.
That Jesus was the idea that someone who it's not just that that Jesus was an unimportant provincial from a backwater, but the fact that he had suffered a peculiarly horrible death. Crucifixion was the paradigmatic fate that was visited on slaves.
Okay, so the next word is paradigmatic. Paradigmatic is like an ideal example, is like a perfect example of something. And this horrible death was visited upon Jesus. So he's using the word visit in an advanced way. If something such as a disaster or a pain is visited on someone, that person experiences it. So to visit in this context doesn't mean to go and see someone or something. It means to inflict suffering, to inflict pain, a disaster, such as what Jesus experienced in the crucifixion. I hope you've learned at least one word with my lesson today. Check out the example sentences to reinforce what you have learned. Thank you.